We go back to the truck and start cleaning up. I was like, God, it smells like shit back here. I don't know if that kid, had a dirty diaper. And Randy was like, it was grandma. It's like, what? And he goes, when I helped her into the back of the truck to sit back there with you, she had shit running down her leg. It was grandma. I was like, God damn it. So I was sitting probably slid across the bench sheet right through her shit as I'm getting ready to get out of the truck. And you didn't think to tell me ahead of time? He's like, no.
Like, you're soaking wet. You already need a uniform change. What does it matter?
Fair.
Hello, and welcome to the Front Seat Debrief. This podcast is intended to confront the unique mental health challenges that our veterans, first responders, and healthcare professionals face on a daily basis. My name is Josh Campbell. I am a social worker who provides therapy in a private practice, and my efforts are focused on these populations. I am a former Army combat medic and a former paramedic firefighter. When my struggles with PTSD became too great for me to continue working as a paramedic, I went back to school earning my BA in English from American Military University. Then I earned my master's in social work at the University of Michigan. This podcast has grown from my own experience coping with repeated exposures to traumatic incidents, my personal path to healing and understanding, as well as my educational background. I want to examine the lived experience of others in coping with trauma, their journey to find healing, and I believe that learning about someone's upbringing can often provide additional context through which greater understanding of their experiences with trauma can be achieved. It is my sincere hope that the content covered in this episode, as well as the episodes that follow, will provide listeners with a sense of not being alone in their struggles. Furthermore, I hope that by having these deeply personal discussions, we can continue to decrease the stigma surrounding mental health, normalize adverse emotional reactions to extreme circumstances, and build momentum for creating a positive culture shift within these professions. Thank you so much for choosing to listen. If you like what you hear, please like, share, and subscribe to stay up to date with our progress here.
Welcome back to the Front Seat Debrief. My name is Josh. My guest today is Alex. Alex Truman started as an EMT back in 2010. She worked for Life EMS in Lake, Newaygo, and Mason counties. She then became a paramedic in 2012. She then worked at Muskegon County Med Control for a year and a half, eventually starting at AMR as the clinical education manager in 2017. She then got her IC license in 2018. She then became the operations manager in March of 2020. Alex, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So generally when we get into the show, I invite you to kind of give us a little flashback to how you got to be where you're at. Just give us like a little bit of your background, how you grew up, and
Sure.
if there's any notable figures or incidents in your past, feel free to share them.
Sure. So, growing up, I grew up in a super small town, Hesperia, Michigan, which is I live in Grand Rapids now, and Hesperia is about an hour 15 northwest of here. Uh, Super small. As in my class I was one of 88 students in my graduating class, and it's still just as small. But that's where I grew up, and um, we didn't have anybody on my mom's side. So my dad and my mom split when I was about 4. But we didn't have, we had some medical professionals on my dad's side, but on my mom's side, not so much. My mom actually got her EMT and then specialist license back when it was still called specialist and not advanced or intermediate. And she was in EMS for about 20 years. I think I was somewhere in elementary or middle school when she came on board with that. And not once in my youth did I think this is the career path that I want to take. It just never even crossed my mind. it was kind of cool because Hesperia is such a small town, and so much like the fire department, paid on call type of situation. And there were numerous times where we'd be at the grocery store picking up stuff from school or something like that, and the tones would drop, and someone's going to pick you up to sit here, and she'd go hop on the truck and go respond. And high school was actually, somebody else that I went to high school with, her mom also worked um, on the ambulance in our small town. And so we both kind of got the opportunity to understand what that was about, and as much as a 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old can figure out. But we would see the ambulance parked on the football field, and we'd get to ride in the ambulance to the football game, and so that kind of stuff was always cool. But even all that, still, it never crossed my mind. Although it did give me an opportunity. It's very familiar and comfortable for me, which I think is probably one area that led me down this path later in life, because I didn't actually go back to school to go into EMS until I was 26. I just had my son, but up until that point, it was never. I'd considered nursing, I'd considered social work, I'd considered everything on Ferris State University's drop down menu of majors. Um, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, but uh, I graduated high school, immediately went to college. Didn't want to. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. And I was very frustrated because my father didn't give me a choice. He said, well, you got to pick something because you're going regardless of what you want to do. And started off at community college. And after a year at Muskegon Community College, I transferred to Ferris State University and just started taking classes. I think I changed my major maybe 5 or 6 times. And finally, I sat down. This was way before, internet was a thing, but this was way before you could just peruse everything that a university or college had to offer online. So I sat on the floor of the business office of the business college at Ferris State University, and I went through every mailbox of every major they offered, just going through what is going to get me out of here the fastest. And so I finally found one that was the small business management and entrepreneurship. And so I was like, this one has the least amount of credits that it requires, and I'll be out of here the soonest, was kind of my thought process. But so that's how I landed on my degree. Not a lot of thought and heart into it, but and now actually I'll go back just a little bit. I did get quite the glimpse into EMS when my mom actually also worked as a supervisor or ops director. I don't remember her title. Um, when I was in high school, and so she would recruit me to run errands, and so I did spend a lot of time at the bases and running errands for work for her, going back and forth. So I did get to see quite a bit, probably more than my sister, who was a year and a half older, and she had her own life going on. So and that again, that probably led to my comfort in the field, and made it not quite so. Even as exciting as EMS can be, especially if you're new and you haven't experienced it truly yet, you have all these ideas and fantasies of what it looks like.
For sure.
Not even, it's not even close as we find out. But I graduated college eventually. I even dropped down to part-time in college. So it took, even though I chose the fastest route possible, it still took forever because I took some um part-time hours versus full speed ahead. And I think I graduated in 2007,
Okay.
and 3 or 4 months after I graduated college, I was pregnant with my son. And I worked with animals before I worked with people. So I worked at the Humane Society in Kent County, even while I was pregnant. And then I moved, or I didn't move, but I worked at an animal hospital in Fremont when I had my son, and then while I was starting my EMT education. And as soon as I got my EMT license, that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I even considered postponing going to medic school just from a financial standpoint. And Jeff Stockhill, I don't know if you're familiar with who he is, but he is the Northern Ops Director for Life EMS, and he was I mean, he's still in that position. He was in that role when I was there, and he's still in that role now. And he said, "Don't do it. Just keep going. Whatever support you need to get through will help you." He's like, "Don't quit." And I was kind of defeated when I left that conversation because it took so much for me to make this decision to take a step back from it. And now you're telling me it's a bad idea. But I'm glad I listened to him because I did. I got it done, and um, I'm here right now as a direct result of that. So how can I be
Sure.
upset? How can I be upset with that? But I got my medic license, and as soon as I got my medic license, I requested a transfer down to Kent County. It didn't happen for a while, but I at least got that ball rolling. And my son and I moved down to Granville, and there just kind of transitioned to work in downtown Grand Rapids or Kent County, which is a much different, I wasn't working 24-hour shifts anymore. It was 12-hour shifts, 14-hour shifts. And, it was just me being a single mom with a kiddo and then working EMS. It was at that time, he still thought it was super exciting that mom was in EMS and she drove an ambulance. And it was about middle school when that stopped being cool for him and was embarrassing. But when he was when he was little, it still worked for me, so we were good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, from there, we right when he was about to start kindergarten, I knew that I wasn't, I couldn't work night shift, and I was not high enough on the seniority list to get like an early shift.
Mhm.
That would allow me to, drop him off at childcare. And first of all, there wasn't childcare that early. 5 in the morning, it's tough to find any childcare at
Yeah.
5 in the morning, let alone one that's going to let him stay there for 12 hours,
Yeah.
or after school for that long. So I knew I was going to have to transition to something a little bit different. And I got a job at a residency clinic for family medicine and worked there for a couple of years. And I did get to experience a lot of stuff that I didn't think I was going to experience. It was basically a glorified MA position, and
Okay.
but because I was a medic, I got to do some extra stuff and some fun stuff that kept me there for a couple of years. But other than that, it was kind of a ugh. But to kind of temper that a little bit, well, I worked on the truck every other weekend, and I say to temper it, but that's really not 100%. I mean, I worked 2 jobs because financially I had to. But also the other side of that was I didn't know what to do. If I didn't have my son and if I wasn't working and I wasn't working on the truck, what the hell am I gonna do? I
Mhm.
don't know what to do with myself. So, and you kind of get stuck in this tornado of you work with these people for 12 to 14 hours, and then you go grab a drink after work. And then what happens when you're getting a drink after work, you're still talking shop. So you're just kind of in this cycle of you're never out of it. You're never not talking EMS. You're never not talking shit calls. You're never not talking about, you know, the silly stuff, the terrible stuff, then you're just kind of stuck. And then your friendship circle just kind of gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it's just EMS, fire, law enforcement. And that's all you do. That's all you talk about. You don't have anything else to talk about because you're all doing the same shit. You're all working, whether you're in law enforcement or fire, EMS, you're all working second and third jobs in the same shit.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I work full-time EMS, but I also work part-time fire. Or, I work full-time law enforcement, but I also work part-time EMS. And you just kind of never allow yourself the opportunity not to think about all that or even just live on the outside of that.
Right.
Forget. You forget how the real world works. And when I say real world, I mean the people that aren't seeing the same shit that we're seeing on a regular basis, and you don't even realize how much it's affecting you until
Sure.
you're out of it. And quite honestly, I'm technically I'm not out of it, but I'm on the administrative side, and I've been on the administrative side now long enough that I feel like I am actually starting to feel feelings again and true emotions. Whereas you
Mm.
get, or for me anyway, it was like you get robotic almost. And, people think that we're callous or insensitive, but I think, and I'm sure some of that is true depending on the individual, but I think we put up such a barrier, such a wall that even we forget who the fuck we are
Oh
outside of
yeah.
EMS in our job. And it isn't until you're removed from it, and it's not immediate. I mean, when I say only recently, I mean, it's been years. It's been years of me being out of it to finally start to feel like, oh, I am I crying? Is this crying? What am I crying for? And and I've done the therapy thing, and I've done and this wasn't something that I necessarily discovered in therapy, but it was just allowing myself to live outside of EMS and, 80 hours a week on a truck, or, a combination of those things to really remember that you're a human being outside of EMS, outside of trauma, outside of medical calls, outside of everything that we see. And, it isn't until you're out of it, for me anyway, that you can actually see just how much it affects you. I mean, it affects the way that I raise my son. He's 17 now. He's a senior in high school. And I think back now about, my God, what did I do to that kid? The things that I prevented him from experiencing, the things that even now, he goes out with his friends, and all I can think of is the reports that I read and the notifications I received from the supervisors from the last weekend of all these shootings, and how many of those shootings involved kids my son's age and younger. And so when he goes out with his friends, that's all that's going on up there, and I'm trying really
Yeah.
hard not to be the mom that's going, how are you? Did you make it okay? Who are you with? What are you guys going to do next? How long are you going to be out? Because remember, you've got to be home. And, and I probably have an overreaction when he gets home, 10, 15 minutes late, because to me, that's an eternity. So much can
Yeah.
happen in 15 minutes that, and if he doesn't answer his phone right away, it is almost panic. And I'm able to see that for what it is. I still feel it, but you don't really realize the impact of this job until you are separated enough, for me anyway, to actually look at it for what it is and see. And it may not be a direct correlation every time, but I can look at it and see, okay, that might be where that's coming from. I'm catastrophizing,
Oh
and
yeah.
um but yeah, this is yeah, it's something.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, trampoline parks when my girls were little, like, no,
Mhm.
thank you. Um,
Right, right.
but
If you're going, you're wearing a sea collar before you get on there.
no shit.
I
Like,
borrowed some from work, it's fine.
well, yeah. My wife is she's an OR nurse, and she worked in Helen DeVos Peds OR. So like, she's like, oh no, you're just asking for like a spoon fracture. Like, we're not
Right,
doing that.
right.
And like,
Not how we're spending the weekends.
certain activities that the kids could do were dictated by what neurologist is on
Right.
staff at like, yeah, our kids missed out on some shit. So
Yeah,
no,
100%.
that's legit though. Yeah. And it's funny because like I've been out of it like I guess 5 years now. And yeah, I'm still finding out. Like just the last like week, I guess, I discovered like how much of a warped perspective I have on death.
Mhm.
And it's really not a good perspective. It's harmful to everybody else that I'm talking to about it.
Yes,
But
100%.
yeah, it's just one of those things that happens. You don't even realize it.
Absolutely. I mean, my partner feels it too. And there's aspects of being in a relationship where it's just courtesy and being considerate of your partner to let them know I've arrived or I'm on my way or I made it here. But the other aspect of that is like, did you make it there?
Yeah.
You know, because we get a front row seat to seeing what happens, even if you do everything right. You could be driving the speed limit, staying in your lane, checking your mirrors, 10 and 2, and it could have nothing to do with what you've done. Somebody else can come and you're dead. And so we have that lens that unfortunately we take everywhere. And um, so that's always like, even though it kind of seems silly, and I know that they're probably okay, but I just really need them to say that they've made it. And
Yeah.
yeah, I guess that's something that I think of a lot is that there's no rhyme or reason to death.
Right.
There's no rhyme or reason to the majority of the stuff that happens. Of course, there are culprits, drunk drivers, and things like that. But I'm talking about the people on the receiving end of those behaviors and those individuals. And so it doesn't like there's no safeguard. There's no true safeguard. So all the things that I prevented my kiddo from experiencing growing up, did I save him from anything? Who knows?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And like I've said this so many times, but like my girls are gonna be in therapy one form or another for the rest of their lives. Like
100%.
I am so sorry if they ever see this. Like it's my fault, my bad.
Yeah. Yeah, my son is in therapy. Well, he's taking a break now. But he's been in therapy, and I am 100% confident that that will be and in all honesty, I hope it is. I hope it's something that he feels comfortable actually asking for when he's wanting to go back and return to therapy. And I'm
Yeah.
so grateful for that. I'm so grateful that he feels comfortable asking for it. And if there's a small takeaway, even if he does end up in therapy for the rest of his life, which I totally understand, why I'm grateful that he feels comfortable enough to ask for it.
Right. Well, yeah, and it's funny because like there's this attitude around seeking therapy that's like, oh, you only need that if you're broken.
Hmm.
Our medical system plays into that because like for insurance to pay for that shit, you have to have a diagnosis, right?
Right.
And I think it's bullshit because I think everybody could use, a non-judgmental person to just listen to the shit they're going through.
Yeah.
Like we all need to get our physical health checked up once a year, right? Like, you
Yeah.
know, I think the same should be with mental health because, if your mental health is fucked up, your physical health will be fucked up.
100%. You're not gonna be able to get out of bed to address your
Yeah.
physical health and your well-being.
Yeah.
100%. And that
You
is,
could,
sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say that is a part of whenever we have new hire orientations, um, that is my speaking point of in the orientation is to not only go over what GMR offers resource wise, but also what it looks like, what it can look like. And I typically ask, uh, there's usually quite a spread of folks that have never been in EMS before. We have our Earn While You Learn program. So those people are just entering an EMT program, so they don't have any experience yet. Anywhere from that to an EMT or a medic that's had anywhere from 0 to 20 years experience. And so a question that I like to ask is, um, for those that have experience before you started even your education or completed your education, what did you think was going to be the most difficult part of this job? And for those who have no experience and are just starting out in the education of becoming an EMT, what do you currently think is going to be the most difficult part of the job for you? And then I share my own, um, what my own thoughts were before I started and where they are now. And then after everyone shares, I say, is that any different now that you've had however long they've been in the field? Or is that any different now that you've completed the education and had some clinical ride-alongs? Did your perception of what's going to be the most difficult part of the job change for you? And some of them, yes, and some of them, they just don't have the experience. And so
Yeah.
my intent is to then go back and say, has anything changed in that regard? And because I think that is very different. I mean, you have this kind of, it's not warped, it's a very exciting idea of what EMS, fire, law enforcement is going to look like when you get into it. And then you get into it and I mean, numerous people, I've had people leave before they finish their training program. And just after they've graduated, I've had people finish their training program and finally get on a truck on their own one-on-one with a regular partner. And, this is not what I thought it was going to be. There's so much more to it. And, and then you get the people that are doing it for 30 years that should have left, 20 years ago, and they're still in it 30 years, later. And it shows up in every interaction that they have. It shows up in
Yeah.
every call that they run, every patient interaction. Um, and I just think that if we are more honest with people when they're getting into it and not just feeding that it's awesome, it's adrenaline, it's um, because I think part of that shock is this isn't what you told me it was going to be at all. And I can
Right.
only assume that it's probably similar in the military to some extent. Um, but and so I try to offer that without it sounding like I'm telling them that you entering EMS was a terrible idea. Let me tell you why. But
Yeah.
also think it is important for them to know as they're going through it. This is going to be hard. Sometimes it's going to be boring. Sometimes it's going to be shitty in ways you'll never be able to describe or articulate. Um, and if it's something that you decide that you don't want to do anymore, can't do anymore for your well-being, whatever the case may be, that is okay. There are
Yeah.
people that are made for it for life. There are people that are made for it for a month. And just be honest with yourself on what you can handle, because the longer you force yourself to stay here when you're not okay, the harder it's going to be on you.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you mentioned like you ask about what people think will be the hardest thing. And as someone who's been doing it for a while, I kind of want to hear what you tell your new hires. Like, what did you think would be the hardest thing about the job when you first started, and what would you say it is now?
For me, it was an MCI. The idea that I would have to step over somebody who's mostly dead to somebody who's slightly less dead, and then make the decision to let this person die while I help this person that's a little less dead than them. I didn't know how I was going to do that. How do I, how am I ever going to do that? That was something that, I mean, and still really, I mean, that's a difficult decision, no matter how long you've been doing it. But that was kind of my primary focus was I don't know how I'm going to make that decision on who to help, who not to help, and just let die in front of me. And what I come back to as what actually turned out being the most difficult part of this job is just how much the job affects my life outside of work.
Mm.
And that goes back to how I raise my son. That goes back to how I interact in relationships, romantic or friendships, and any relationship, period. It shows up because there's just this little nugget of fear, for lack of a better description. That's the only thing I can think of. Fear and anxiety that just kind of hangs out in the back of what could happen at any given time. And because that's what we see. I mean, someone who crashed their car and died because a deer ran out in front of them.
Yeah.
And they chose to slam on their brakes instead of continue on and hit it. And now their mangled body is non-compatible with life, and you've got to make that phone call, and it's just you were just alive 5 minutes ago. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Their phone's ringing, and you can see mom or wife or dad, their name on the phone, and okay. And yeah, nightmare fuel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate you seeing that though, because yeah, when you said that, I was trying to think about my own experience and like what my thoughts were at the beginning of everything, and what I would say now. Of course, I got into it through the military, so like,
Sure, you started off at a 10 probably or a 9.
yeah, like my biggest concern was like, well, incoming rounds, like, you know?
Right. But I have even individuals that come in with military experience, what I'll ask them is the same but different. I'll say, at the beginning of your military career, what did you think was gonna be the most difficult part of your military career? And then what did it end up being? Because a lot of those folks are, they don't necessarily have EMS experience yet or much of it. So I ask that same question, but geared toward their military experience. So you
Yeah.
saying that, I'm curious, what did you think was gonna be the most difficult part of your military experience? And I've had people say, and I completely understand, "Oh, I didn't have any thoughts about it at all. I didn't think about it at all. I was just going to do it. I didn't have a
Yeah.
difficult part."
Yeah. I think for me, it probably would have been like working on friends. Um, just because of like how tight you get with your people. You know what I mean? Like you saw episode one. Zane was my battle buddy. That's what we called him in the army. And like, we did everything together. And like if he were to get hit, like that would be awful. I mean, I think the military does a really good job of forcing you into a place of compartmentalization.
Mhm.
And, like it's like, oh, blood, stop the blood. Like,
Yep. It makes
like you kind
yeah,
of fall into
absolutely.
that. But then like the part of the military is they don't really teach you how to respond after the fact.
Right.
Like you're good in the game, but at the end it's like, all right, what do you do? And you know, losing losing friends is something that unfortunately, at least for people in my generation, became a very common thing in the military just because everybody was deploying
Mhm.
constantly, right? Um, but yeah, it was strange.
But where at what point did you come to that realization? I mean, at what point in your military career did you come to that thought of, "It's gonna be difficult to work on friends"? And is that any different than at the very, very, very beginning, like, when you just signing on or considering signing on?
I mean, I think it was kind of there the whole time, but you don't realize like that my job as a medic was ostensibly to fix other American soldiers.
Mm,
So you're going to be working on, people wearing the same uniform.
sure.
Um, before I went through all that stuff though, like I didn't realize how tight the friendships would be and so like that added that difficulty, but um yeah, I don't know. It it was definitely different transitioning over to civilian side.
Sure.
Um, because like I kind of came into it like, well, after the military, whatever. Like
Right.
it's a cakewalk.
Mistake.
It's
Yeah.
not. It's not. Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult in different ways, I imagine, and I've never been in the military, so I certainly won't, pretend to know what I'm talking about or speak to anybody that has, but I do have friends who've been in the military, and what they've shared, that's a pretty common thread of, "I had no idea how to function in civilian life. I had no idea how to
So
function without being told what to do. I had no idea how to." A friend of mine, he had been out for years, over 5 years, 8 years or something like that, and he was still wearing the same pair of glasses, and because he was still in that mindset of, no one told me I had to make an appointment at the eye doctor, nobody told me, and it seems silly, and at first when I heard it, I was like, "What?" But he truly struggled with that, and just, not to mention PTSD, traumatic brain injuries, things like that. I mean, it's a struggle.
yeah.
Human interaction is a struggle. Um, Memory loss is a struggle, and again, not my experience, but things that have been shared, and that's been a common thread that I've noticed just in communication with folks that have gone through any type of military enlistment, deployments or anything like that, is the transition to civilian life is difficult on many levels. Not
Yeah.
just the not being told what to do, so I don't know what to do next. But just interacting at an administrative job or at an office job when you don't have to um, worry about bullets flying over your head. And I think the EMS equivalent to that for me is I also seem to work really well under pressure. When, I started my position in the height of COVID, March of 2020, and I was like, fucking got it, one crisis after another. And I was doing all right. And I felt like I had an idea of where I needed to go and how to address, or, nobody knew anything or knew how to do anything with COVID when it was first coming out. But I knew that it was a crisis and I could address it as such. And there was
Yeah.
always something that I was doing to stay on top, to maintain. But as soon as that died down, I don't know what to prioritize when there's not a crisis.
Right.
I have no idea. Is this important to work on now? I don't know. And I still kind of struggle with that when I have an intense, and not even crisis maybe, but an intense deadline or an intense anything. I can focus. I can get it done. I can be Johnny on the spot. But as soon as that pressure is released and that stress is gone, I don't know what to work on next. I don't know. You want to look at uniforms? I don't know. You want to, it's, so I still struggle with that. And I assume that that has something to do with just the experiences that we had. I know you said that the one thing that the military does really well is it teaches you to compartmentalize.
Yeah.
And I think that we do that also in EMS. I mean, you
Oh yeah.
have to run the cardiac arrest and tell the wife or the husband or the family that their loved one is dead, and then you got to go run the toe pain uh, for the individual that you ran on 4 times already that day at the corner of Division and Wealthy. And they don't even have toes. They're in a wheelchair without toes, and
Right.
you have to have the ability to transition very, very quickly from one to the next, because one of the important parts of our job is we've got to befriend these people. We've got to make them feel comfortable with us pretty quickly. So we've got to earn their trust in
Yeah.
short session, and that's every hour, every 45 minutes, whatever that cadence is. And so, I mean, in dispatch as well, and that's something that I feel like they get forgotten about. The dispatch folks in their experiences is such a short time frame that they have an individual on the call. They give us the call and now they're off the phone and they don't know what happens, and just the effect that that has on them um, is something that, and I know is looked into and addressed, but I don't think at the level that the ground providers or military folks are. I've had some dispatchers, thankfully, willing to share with me just what it feels like to them. Can we get follow-ups too? This is what I heard on the phone, and then the phone went dead, or and then they hung up, and I have no idea what happened. But they're
Yeah.
also ones that have to go from answering the phone and giving, CPR instructions to, picking, hanging that up. 5 seconds later, picking it up for the toe pain or the
Oh,
toothache. And so that's
BG's laying in the road again. Like,
right. You just nudge it. But I mean, the ability to compartmentalize in those phone calls that they receive too, I think is kind of an underexplored trauma.
yeah.
Um,
No, I would agree. And, you know, I think it's great that, people think about including them when it comes to like SISM debrief or whatever. But yeah, I mean this they're still missing that whole, you know, closed loop. Like when I was still at AMR, like you became the person that I would contact, like, hey, I just ran this really crazy call. Can you get me
mhm,
some follow-up from the hospital? And we had those professional channels to do that,
yeah.
but rarely was it a thought like, hey, maybe
Yep.
dispatch wants to know
Right.
too. Like,
Right. Absolutely. And I've certainly, yeah, forgotten that numerous times. Even still now, it's not the first thing. Somebody will have to say something or do something for me to go, oh shit, yeah. Do you guys have any questions about it? How are you doing with this? Um, I mean, we've had employees commit suicide, uh, you know, quite a few times since I've been there, and that affects everybody,
Mm.
everybody. And it is a difficult thing to navigate. And, but in that is still dispatched to getting the call for a well-being check or notification um, on at least two of the three that I'm thinking of currently. I mean, and that's another reason why it's so important to me to have those conversations when people are coming on board first thing. This is how it can affect you. These are things to look out for. These are things that you should be looking out for in each other. You're starting off in this orientation together. Become friends, or at least be comfortable reaching out after orientation is done, after you finish with field training, after reaching out to each other and just checking in. Because I will tell you, once you get with a permanent partner, you're probably going to be the first one to identify when there's something going on with your partner, whether they say something or not. You're with them in the truck 12 to 14 hours a day. So get comfortable asking, how are you
Yeah,
doing? Is everything okay? And I haven't done it in a while. And after this conversation, I'm wondering if I should bring it back. Is I would have them practice saying out loud, "Are you suicidal?" Because that is not an easy thing to ask anybody.
it isn't. It isn't.
And so I was like, "Has anybody ever said that before?" And sometimes I'll get a couple people that have raised their hand, and I said, "Say it out loud. It's going to be uncomfortable, but I need you to
Yeah,
keep saying it so that it's until it's not uncomfortable, because it's a question that needs to be asked." And that was that was always an interesting conversation, and I've just forgotten about that until just now, us having this
yeah.
conversation.
Well, yeah, and like you mentioned the suicides, and I'm thinking of two of them. I don't know that I know a third one, but Lindsay and Mike, right? Those
Yeah.
two,
Mhm.
such a tragedy, and within like what, 10 months of each other or something. Um,
Yeah. We had, um, 2 I think it was 2 years ago now, uh, December. Um, his name was Baron, and
mm,
he everything was fine. He was in the orientation where I gave the mental health spiel, how to take care of yourself, not just that, but, exercise, eat right, get sleep. The 3: exercise, eat right, get sleep. These are very important to your well-being, and it's easy to forget to sleep. It's easy to forget to eat. It's easy to forget all this, to do all this other stuff, but it's really important that you do. And um, he was still in his training program, and he had called in for his shift. He was in the parking lot, um, struggling, and his trainer saw him, or his trainer's partner saw him. No, it's his trainer's partner, trainer or trainer's partner. I don't remember who had him, and saw him struggling. And he said, if you need to take the day, it wasn't related to a call or anything like that. But he was still struggling. And they said, if you need to take the day, you can certainly take the day. And he said, yeah, I think I need to take the day. And about a half an hour later, crew was dispatched to his address. And um, that was really tough. That was
yeah,
really um, for everybody, because his partners knew his address at that point, and it was, even though we're on Logis, any priority one is still radio traffic. And yeah, that was awful. And then we did have a CISM debrief after that for both his uh, trainer and trainer's partner, and then the crew that actually responded. And the crew that responded, they were just, they had no idea who it was, but when they got there, he still had his uniform on. And um, just, yeah, awful. And his
yeah,
family was not local. I want to say they were in Denver or Texas or something. So there was lots of back and forth communication with them. And I just, wow, yeah, another young guy, early
yeah,
20s.
yeah. And I think it's worth pointing out too that like, the shit we see on the job
Hmm.
fucks with you. Like it takes a piece of you. and it can put us in a really bad place. But as we've mentioned in a couple previous episodes, like most of us that end up here came pretty fucked up, and
Yep.
we struggle to like leave our personal shit at the door. Like
Mhm.
it's impossible, right? Like we can't
Yeah.
forget who we are and forget what kind of shit we're dealing with at home. Like it all comes with us because we're always all of these things.
Yeah.
And, like it sucks because, you're not getting the right kind of help for stuff like that. And then it ends up being something like that. And
Yeah.
yeah, and that's like just a huge hit on like, morale, team
Mhm.
cohesiveness, like all of it.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah. And yeah, like how do you address that stuff when people won't talk? It's like that's where we've got to be better about engaging, right?
Yeah. 100%. And I know it's not easy to insert yourself in those positions too, especially if you don't know somebody very well. And that's kind of where leadership comes in, right? It
Yeah,
doesn't matter if how well I know you, because I know that the majority, if not all the staff, given my current position, I am the least in tune to to each individual because I'm so far removed from it. But even so, I encourage people to come to me if they're not comfortable or if you aren't sure how to address this conversation, but something feels off, tell a supervisor, call me. And I give my cards to everybody. And sometimes they call me, sometimes they call a supervisor. But I force myself to. And it's not really difficult for me at this point to have that conversation because of how important it is to me, because I've seen the 3 examples that we just talked about because I've seen that and experienced it, not just, like, running calls and that sort. I've seen, my fair share of those as well, but, employees and being that close to it and seeing the ripple effect that it has to the staff and the community. Um, it's an easy thing for me to ask, but I also know I didn't start there. It didn't start off being easy for me. It didn't
right.
start, um and I know I'm asking a lot of individuals when I'm asking them to be that person to reach out, if they see something where somebody's bothered, and, I do appreciate those that do share, and even if they're not comfortable and I'm ultimately the one making the phone call, I do appreciate that. I know it's not an easy thing to do. Nobody likes being uncomfortable. Nobody likes, you know, asking some of those difficult questions. Uh But for me, I've got nothing to lose. We're not friends to begin with, but I am genuinely concerned about your well-being, so it's
For
easier
sure.
to get that. I'm not the one that they've gotta sit next to on the next shift, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because like for me, there's a huge divide between, the head shed, the admin team,
Mm.
and, road crews. Like there's that door in that hallway. Like I know I don't want to go past like once I hit the carpet, like I try to avoid that at all costs.
Yeah,
And even the supervisor's like, I don't want to be behind him.
yeah.
Like anytime a soup shows up on scene, it's like, oh fuck, what did I do?
Why
Like,
are you here? Why are you
yeah,
here?
yeah. And like, that's my own thing, but like, I'm sure I'm not the only one that tries to avoid the head shed at all costs, and um, it's sometimes tough to bridge that distance when you're in a tough spot.
Yeah. Agreed, agreed.
So we had kind of discussed all the background stuff,
Mhm,
and um, we hinted toward a lot of the dramatic and traumatic elements of being in the field.
mhm.
Um, I can't do the math right now, but you were on the road in some capacity for 10 years?
No,
8
so
years?
I mean, regularly, well, yeah, I guess I when I came to AMR is when I stopped, um, like really regularly picking up shifts. Like I was no longer part-time at Life EMS, and that really happened, right before I came on board in 2017 at AMR. I mean, and every once in a while, and certainly not often enough, I'd hopped on a truck and COVID and everything just to help out here and there. But
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, it was bare bones and nothing even to worth mentioning as far as volume goes. The last time I was on the truck was, I think, 2 Christmases ago. And of course, we bought a cardiac arrest right out of the gate. We didn't know it was a cardiac arrest at the time, but once we got there, sure was. Um, but yeah, I would say so. That's what started in 2010. So 7 years.
Okay. Yeah,
Of,
that cardiac arrest on Christmas is par for the course, though, right?
I've had cardiac arrest on St. Patrick's Day, cardiac arrest on Mother's Day, cardiac arrest on Christmas. And I can tell you where each one of them was. The one on St. Patrick's Day was actually not far from where I live now, over on Maynard off of Lake Michigan Drive on the northwest side.
Hmm.
Dude was running, doing like a daily run and just collapsed. And the people that called it in is the house that he collapsed in front of. And I don't know how long they waited before they called, but when we got there, like, well, yeah, he was running and then he just fell and it looked like he was having a seizure and then he stopped. And so we waited for him to get up for a little while and he never did. So then we called and it's like, Jesus.
Yeah.
And I was working with Randy Foreman for that one. And
Randy Foreman, huh?
yeah.
I
And
miss that dude.
yeah, no kidding. That was a fun time. We worked a whole bid together. That was a good time. But yeah, we transported him. He died. He didn't make it. And I can only imagine, we had left at that point and then come back and his wife was just getting there.
Mhm.
I mean, of course, you think about how that process came to be, and your husband goes out for his daily run and then just doesn't come home. How does that notification process look when that wasn't really a time where people are running with cell phones. That was, I mean, how did she find out? And just to think about being the wife, sitting there waiting for your husband to come home, and then you get a phone call that, yeah, he died on his run. Um,
Yeah, and you don't expect that from someone who's out running, right? Like,
right. Yep.
no, you expect that from someone like me who's like sitting their fat ass at a desk all day every day. So,
Yeah. The
gosh,
Mother's Day one was a bummer. I ran that one with Eric Dycraft.
Eric Digraph, good grief. Okay.
And she lived in Baldwin and she came down. That was at the what is it called, over on Alpine, York Creek.
Oh
uh
no. Okay.
came down to visit family for Mother's Day and then she classed out.
Hmm.
Mm, that was a bummer. She also died on scene. We called that one on scene though. We didn't transport her. And kind of funny sidebar on that call is Eric had to take a shit and we were like one room from the bathroom. We were in the living room, bathroom was right there, and he's like, I swear to God, if we're here any longer, Alex, I need to use their bathroom. I need to use their bathroom. He didn't. He ended up not. We ended up being able to clear soon enough, but that was the topic of conversation while we're sitting there waiting for the ME. Um, and even as you know, these conversations happen mid working cardiac arrest. I gotta
Oh
take
yeah.
a shit. You're just like, oh, do you want me to take over? And you're kind of trying to figure out next steps here. And those are kind of that appear to people on the outside as callousness. And you
Yeah.
guys are taking it seriously. How can you be thinking about anything else than what you're doing right now? And I think something that's always surprised me when on a truck is how, yes, there's a nervousness as you're getting used to your roles as a paramedic and your responsibilities. But when I do hop on the truck, it is like autopilot. You don't have to think or do. Everything is protocol. So when people hear you say, "What do you mean you don't have to think?" It's like you know what you have to do, and it's not. It's so different than my regular day-to-day requirements that you can shut everything out because you have to. But in
Yeah.
the moment, it doesn't feel like you're shutting anything out. It doesn't feel like it's this stressful thing the way that I think people see it when you try to describe it. It's peaceful, dare I say, in its own way, in its own right, because I know what I've got to do. I'm doing it, and that's all there is to it. And the same way when you are working 12-hour shifts and you pick up an 8-hour shift of overtime, how quickly and easy breezy an 8-hour shift is compared to
Right.
14. And you try to explain that to somebody outside of it, and they're like, what are you talking about? An 8-hour shift? Like, that's an extra 8 hours. That's a whole day. Like, yeah, but it's only, it's 4 hours shorter than what I'd normally be working. And it just went by so quickly and it was so easy. And you enjoy it and you have fun. And people are looking at you going, I don't get it. Like,
Yeah.
what do you mean?
Right.
And I think those are things that stay with me. And I mean, and those I could identify then, but I didn't really think of that as odd or as, you don't have I don't have the view of it that I have now looking back. And just how crazy is that we thought, ah, it's an easy breezy breath of fresh air kind of day to just work 8 hours on a truck. And, but yeah, it's a special kind of heaven for somebody with ADHD and, you know,
Right.
somebody who can allow for that hyper focus and just kind of take you out of it. And um, I don't know if that's the chicken or the egg. I don't know if I had that
Yeah.
before EMS or this just did it, or if it came from EMS. But yeah, and that's something I think about too. Is, I mean, we all go into this with our own bag of shit, with our own idea, like, and sometimes, and even still now, I wonder. I try to see the line, and I don't know that it's even worth doing or if I'm ever able to find it, but how much of me was already this way before coming into EMS, and how much of it was caused by EMS or supported by EMS or I don't know. But it is interesting to look back on and think of.
Yeah. And it's funny because, like, thinking back when I first became a paramedic, like, cardiac arrest was kind of an intimidating thing because,
Yeah.
like,
You got to
you
practice
know,
your mega codes.
right, yeah. And, like, it's almost like the big game, right? Like, you gotta be all practiced up and know what you're gonna be doing.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, by the time I was done in EMS, it's like, shit, give me a cardiac arrest because, like,
Yep.
I don't
That's
have
all
to
flying
spend
by my head.
any time thinking on that. And, like, ACLS class, whatever, and I sleep through the class, like, because,
Mm-hmm.
like, you do it so damn often that there's no thought required.
Yep.
And, like, at that point, like, all the real thought that goes in is like when you have someone with like an unknown medical emergency that like
Right. Those
you
priority twos are the ones that are like, do I go one or is this really a three? Or the ones where you aren't really sure,
yeah,
those are the ones. Diff breathers, those are my least favorite. Those
yep,
have you fucking working.
yeah. And like I can think there's one that kind of stands out. I don't remember where we're coming from, but like um we were going like priority 2 to Butterworth, and right about Classic East, like I see some pink foam coming out of this lady's mouth, and like, oh
No, no,
fuck,
no, don't do
like
that. Don't do that.
like CPAP, we need to go now. Like, get me there. Um, yeah, just like those, and that call turned in like 30 seconds or something.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
that was actually one when I was like coming from Portland. Um,
Okay.
so like I had this woman like with me for 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And like as we got on to Michigan, that's when, shit went south. Like she was fine
Ma'am,
until she wasn't.
what are you doing?
Yeah. But yeah, those are the ones that, you really need to be thinking about constantly and
Yeah. Yep.
paying attention to what's happening.
100%.
But yeah. But yeah, like when you said that you had that cardiac arrest on Christmas, it's like Christmas and Thanksgiving stand out to me because like you either are sitting at the same point that never gets staffed any other time during the year
Right. Right.
for 12 hours straight, or you are going to be pushing,
Yeah.
pushing and squeezing, you know?
Yeah. 100%.
And there's not too many cases in the middle.
No.
Yeah.
No.
But no, it's always fun because I always remember like the highlight of, Christmas was going up to that one church that always had like a buffet type thing for first
Mhm.
responders, and like dispatch would get us all rotated up there, and so you get to sit down and have a meal with coworkers that you don't see very often, and
Right. Right.
people from life and Rockford and whoever else happened to be in the area, and it was always a good time.
Yeah.
Um, which is nice because they're family,
Right.
and you can't be with your own family, so fuck it, like might as well enjoy it
Yeah.
with the cowork families. But
Agreed. Agreed.
yeah, um, so I one thing I kind of want to talk about, I would imagine that you probably have more memorable calls working up in the northern counties than you do from the Grand Rapids area. Is that accurate?
Yeah, they're pretty comparable, but yeah, I would say because I mean, you spend more time with them, and in a rural area, as you can probably identify, is those are you more often than not, they're legitimate calls. These are sick people. You don't have, of course, you have maybe one or two regulars, but they're not like the regulars that we have downtown.
Sure.
You don't run on them 4 or 5 times in a day. You may run on them, once a week, and that's what's regular about that, or once a month, and that's what's regular about them. But I have, yep, her name was Peggy up in when I worked in Mason County, and this kind of ties into this actually. She's a retired nurse who just struggled to. I don't ultimately know what her diagnosis was, but she called regularly. It was usually 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and she just wanted her vitals checked.
Mm,
And she would call, and then when we would get there, she would get up, come to the door, unlock it, and then run back to her bedroom before we got to the door and lay back in bed. And so I just think I need my vitals checked. And it's like you're working 24-hour shifts at that time, and it's like, why do you need your you've been what's going on that you feel you need your vital? Well, I just think that they need to be checked. And then it got to the point where, I mean, not the hospital up there would just say, "Please call before you bring her in because she doesn't need to come in." And then she would hear them say that, and then she would ask us to drive her all the way up to Manistee to go to West Shore, and we're like, "What?" And so we're yeah, sleep deprived because you're working at 24, and then you have Peggy calling because she wants her vitals checked, and she's not sure if she wants to go in or not. But I can't go to this hospital; they won't take me. It's like they have to take you. If you want to go, we'll take you. And it's just this. Um, that and every partner that I had and responded there with, you have varying degrees of politeness, right? You've got the one that's
yeah.
happy to help Peggy out because it's an easy call. She's not really wanting anything. And then you have the other one that's sleep deprived and is like, "What do you want, Peggy?" And it's just kind of making things worse. And so it's kind of a crapshoot as to which one I was with. But um, so as a regular, she's probably my most memorable. And I have another one who's a female, and this was before we had 12 leads on the trucks up there. We just had the 4 leads, and she called for vomiting, just constantly vomiting. I think I've got the flu, and where we pull up there, and she's like on all fours on her bed, just heaving and heaving and heaving. And we're like, oh, that's a bummer. Let me give you some Zofran. Let me give you some, we put her on the monitor because we gave her Zofran. And this was right after I got my medic license, and it's my call, and I'm just treating her like she's got the flu. Started an IV, giving her some fluids, giving her some Zofran, putting her on the 4 lead, and that was the extent of it. And we get her to the hospital, do turnover, and the single physician that's in the ED at Ludington Memorial Hospital comes running out of the room going, "Holy shit!" And then shows me the 12 lead, and she's fucking STEMI up to here, and I, I had
Uh,
this feeling of, did I do something wrong? Did I do something wrong? And my partner at the time was like, "We don't have 12 leads. We couldn't do a 12. We wouldn't know." I mean, she wasn't having, 'cause women present differently. She wasn't having any chest
right.
pain. I'm thinking, well, no, I should know that a woman presents differently, and that should have been, part of my differential. That should have been. And he's like, "Don't, nope. This we did what we could with the information we had," and so that was pretty memorable. And they ended up shipping her down to Mercy in Muskegon, I think, shortly
Mm,
after that. But that was a pretty memorable call. Um, and we've had the one we didn't even work this one. It was a DOA, and I just found it odd because he was a school bus driver,
okay.
and he didn't get up. I mean, you think about it, school bus drivers get up ass early. They and we didn't get the call until I think 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning.
Oof.
And his wife was there the whole time. And she's like, "Well, he works, he drives a school bus." And I thought it was odd that he was still in bed, but I just figured whatever. And she was in the house with him all morning long until she finally went in to check on him. And oh, he's dead and rigor and not moving. And um before she called 911, she just called the funeral home. And so the funeral home was already there. And I'm like, "What do you-" and state police were there also, but they didn't seem like they were questioning anything. And I was like, "No, the funeral home's already here." She called them before she called us. I mean, dude is stiff and dead. So that was kind of the weirdest one, and I don't know that anything ever came of it, but I just found that one to be a little out of order. And she didn't
Yeah.
seem upset. She's just like, "Yep, he just didn't wake up." Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Uh, and then, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's one of those that I'm like, there's something wrong here. Like,
Right, right. Right, order with the way that you did things.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, there was definitely more of a, I mean, there were calls that stressed me out, in Kent County, but when I worked in, Lake Mason and Newaygo, it was just this, because 'cause you're with them longer, you're transporting longer, so
Yeah.
you're required to you get through more of the treatment and the protocol. And so that was always it felt more stressful. Granted, there were fewer and far between because it was rural, and so you just don't have the call volume, but, um, the butthole pucker lasted longer, when
Hmm.
I was working up in Mesa Nuevo and, Lake County. And, I had my first pediatric cardiac arrest up there, and that was a blessing in disguise in the way that it was dispatched, because I thought they said a 30-year-old female. And so I was working out of Fremont then, and the call was in Baldwin. And so that was a long ass drive from Fremont to Baldwin, responding code for this 30-year-old in cardiac arrest. And then we get out, and my partner, Rob Benson, goes, "Grab the peds bag." And I was like, "What? For why? Why do we need a peds bag?" And he's like, "Because it's a 3-year-old." And I said, "Okay, got it." And um, ultimately, she didn't make it, but she's a very sick little girl. She was nonverbal, blind. She had a feeding tube. She had a trach. She um, was, she had a respiratory alarm that went off. Mom was at work, dad was at home, and the respiratory alarm is what woke dad up. And so, dad had some CPR training, so he's doing his best. But I think her trach was plugged, and um, ultimately we did get pulses back. And I was an EMT at the time, um, but I helped with the stabilize the IO after my partner got the IO, and then I had to drive with mom up front with me in the passenger seat for the entire 45-minute drive from their home to Gerber in Fremont. And that was a trip. And, partners working on her in the back. I don't remember if we lost pulses at all during transport or not, but mom's, you know, talking to, I don't remember if dad was in the back with them and, my partner or if he drove separately, but I had mom up front with me, and that was a long drive. Um, and then we ended up actually flying her from Gerber to DeVos.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was a tough one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one thing like having to engage with the family on scene.
Yeah.
It's like for cardiac arrest, a normal cardiac arrest, you might be there 35, 40 minutes
Mhm.
and then you can leave. But like to, to have them like right in your space
Yeah.
for that long has to be difficult.
Yeah. We were to that point, we were on scene for about a half hour or so before we transported. So we had that and then the extended drive time. But and I guess the only not even the saving grace. I mean, I had a pretty good team, as far as like supervisors to check on me afterward, with it being my first pediatric class one. And um I don't want to say that it made it easier, but I think it did make it a little bit easier with how sick she already was. I mean,
Yeah.
this kid had just a laundry list of comorbidities. And so, I mean, and family was devastated, of course, but as you're probably aware, I mean, you kind of get to a point where what else could be worse than this? And so that alone made it a little bit easier of a cardiac arrest. And I always feel bad saying that, especially to people outside of EMS, because it sounds callous, it sounds shitty. Well, what's the difference from, well, in my mind, I feel like she might be more at peace now than being constantly hooked up to all this equipment. And
Right. Well, yeah. And for me, and like, I kind of feel like even for the family, it had to be something that they're viewing as like an eventuality. Like, we know
sure,
this is going to happen. She had a respiratory alarm for fuck's sake. Like,
right, right,
like they had to know. And no, it's not going to make it easier for them. But I don't know. It's a tough thing, right? Like, there's no easy way to deal with like the death of a kid.
yeah, 100%, 100%. We had a call. I was working with Randy. This was down in Kent County, and we were called to a 2-year-old drowning. And I was driving, and I looked at Randy and I said, "I don't want to do this fucking job anymore. I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to. I don't want to respond to this call. I don't want to do it." And he was wonderful, of course. And he's, rather than relying on the company provided stethoscopes, I had my gifted cardiology 3 Littman that I bought myself after graduating medic school. And
Oh
he's like,
yeah.
he goes, good. He's like, where's your stethoscope? And he puts it on. He's like, this is what we're gonna do. This is how we're gonna address it if we get there and it's real. This is what I'm gonna do. This is what you're gonna do. It's gonna be okay. And I was like, oh, okay. And we get there and we see fire pulling away. And so now we have the question, is this the right house? Is this the wrong house? Why is fire leaving? What's going on? And we don't have any updated information. And we get there and in the front yard, like we don't hear anything. We don't hear people. Eventually, we see an individual come to the front yard. This individual is nonverbal, cognitively impaired, and just kind of points. And so we try every door until I think we went in through the garage, which brought us to the back deck on the back side of the house. where a hot tub was sitting with the cover off, and there's nobody around, and all I can think of is, oh, fuck, is that kid in the hot tub? So I'm like, and it's bubbling enough so you can't, it's not clear, and so I'm like digging around. My whole like third of my body is inside the hot tub, feeling around just to make sure
Yeah.
that there's not a child in there. And so I, look ridiculous. Like I'm wet and I'm dripping, and we finally go in the house, which is where grandma, grandpa, and the single firefighter was in the living room with the child, who was okay and on the couch, on dripping wet. And I'd never been so relieved in my life. But holy shit, up until getting to that point, I was like, this is the worst day of my life. you know? And it was, oh my goodness. The kiddo wasn't turns out kiddo wasn't underwater for terribly long. But grandma lost track of kid, and ultimately kid crawled into the hot tub and wasn't under for terribly long, was conscious, was alert, talking to us. And we get him loaded in, and grandma rides in the back with me, and kid starts getting a little sleepy. And so then I start to get nervous, and I'm like, well, does he, does he take naps? Yeah, he takes naps. Like, okay, what time of day does he usually take naps? And she's like, well, right around this time. So I was like, okay, all right. I mean, everything was fine. Vitals were fine, but it's, we weren't there, so I don't know exactly how long he was under. It's just the unknown that scares the shit out of you.
Yeah,
And,
for sure.
we get to the hospital, and uh, turn over the kid and everything. We go back to the truck and start cleaning up. I was like, God, it smells like shit back here. I don't know if that kid, had a dirty diaper. And Randy was like, it was grandma. It's like, what? And he goes, when I helped her into the back of the truck to sit back there with you, she had shit running down her leg. It was grandma. I was like, God damn it. So I was sitting probably slid across the bench sheet right through her shit as I'm getting ready to get out of the truck. And you didn't think to tell me ahead of time? He's like, I no.
Like, you're soaking wet. You already need a uniform change. What does it matter?
Fair. Fair.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. No, it'd be great to get Randy's perspective on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I would be curious. I'd be curious to know if he remembers. That's the other thing is, I mean, you have calls that you mutually remember, but I don't always know. I mean, and I've not kept in contact with everybody, but you always wonder if the calls that you remember are the same, that they remember the same calls, or if you don't remember all of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would be curious to know if he remembers
I
that one.
I think there's enough memorable details in that I'm sure he remembers it. Um,
I think so too. I do too.
yeah, I worked with him at Cutlerville, and so we were pretty cool. Like, always spent a lot of time talking about, like, the medical training. Like, he pulled me in to help with all that stuff for the fire department,
Mhm.
and so like I've gotten to hear a lot of his stories. He was one of the responding firefighters for my first infield delivery. So like
Okay.
he was a part of that whole memory, which was hilarious because I guess one of the sheriff's deputies like physically turned green and had to leave the area because which not everybody needs to see that, right?
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, no, I always had a good time with Randy, and he was so good at what he did. Um,
Yeah.
Kind of a
Agreed.
bummer to know that he's not doing it anymore, but
Yeah.
you
Agreed.
know, we
Agreed.
uh we all have to make a decision when it's time for us to go,
Yeah.
right?
Sure. For sure.
Um, yeah, I'll have to ask him if he wants to be a guest at some point.
I think that would be great. I got to kind of have I don't even know how to refer to it, but at another recognition ceremony, I got the opportunity to hand him a challenge coin.
Mm.
Um, as in, I was uh, sitting on the CHEMS executive board at the time, which sounds fancy, but we just rotate between the three agencies every 2
Oh, okay.
years as who gets to represent the transporting ALS folks on the executive board. And so, but being in that seat, I got the opportunity to hand out challenge coins at one of the recognition ceremonies, and to be able to hand my old partner a challenge coin was pretty surreal. It was interesting. It was fun. It was a good time.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know I've got one of those challenge coins around here somewhere, but
Yeah.
yeah, you played a role in that one also.
I did. I did. Well worth it. Well worth it. Most deserving for sure. For sure.
It's kind of funny though, because like, if I'm honest, that really helped push me to where I'm at now, if you think about it.
I mean, it makes sense, but I also didn't know how much of that existed before. Like your desire, I mean, to do what you're currently doing. Um, but
It
that's
wasn't there until like,
oh,
maybe,
okay.
I mean, I had finished my bachelor's degree. I was planning on going to be a high school English teacher.
Right, I remember that now. Okay, I remember you sharing that now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, but like when the decision was made to go to school for social work, like suddenly things started to make sense, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. And like all of that just kind of played into the decision, like, okay, I guess there's been this uh, you know, passion for that stuff.
Yeah.
So now
Good.
you're a guest on a podcast about that shit.
How we've come full circle.
Yeah. It's been something else for sure. Um, no, I do really appreciate though that the difference of being out in those rural environments really changes the nature of the job. And like
Yeah.
Kevin and I discussed that quite a bit on the second episode.
Mhm.
'Cause yeah, like working downtown Grand Rapids, you just not with a patient very long. Like
Yeah.
it, yeah, it's a different game when you get out in sticks.
Yeah. 100%. And I think, I mean, each scenario, urban or rural, you have, the calls that you remember, the people that you kind of build connections with. But I think in the rural setting, you really have an opportunity to not just build rapport, but you kind of build a relationship with an individual. And so much like the example you gave, and I know this wasn't rural, but the example you gave of Patrick's call where everything was going fine, got the patient to Metro, turned the patient over, and then they class out. I mean, I can it's very easy to do that in a rural setting because you have that extra time just to kind of build a relationship, and especially when you have those little old ladies, or they have stories to tell, and when they've got maybe they're at an assisted living facility where they don't have much opportunity to tell their story, but you get them in the back of the truck and you learn so much about so many incredible people.
Oh yeah,
And I couldn't tell you the number of times where I'm like, "You did what? You met who? You did what for who? You were here then?" I mean, those are just eye-opening, and it just makes your world grow exponentially because
yeah.
sometimes, like we talked about earlier, you're so locked into what you're doing, it's narrowly focused that and just the content of this work, you kind of forget that there's a whole other fucking world out there that you have experienced, the very tiny tip of your pinky fingernail, and those are the moments that I always walked away from that shift, or at the very least that call, feeling like hopeful. Um, so much of this job, it just feels hopeless and negative and drab, and so uh, those kind of lower acuity calls where you got an opportunity to hang out with grandma in the back of the truck for, you know, 10, 15, 20 minutes, but you still get to learn just so much about people that you are for a very brief moment, you're reminded how small you are, but in such a good way that there's so much good that you're not focusing on or thinking of, and you're missing it. Um, that kind of just gave you the extra oomph to get to the next shift of, "Bleh."
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right. There was many times working in the back of the ambulance that I just wanted to like write a book about some of these people's experiences. Um, there's like three I think that stand out for me. One guy retired as a general from, I guess it ended up being the Air Force, but he flew planes for the Army Air Corps in World War II. Like the stories that guy could tell,
Sure,
like
sure.
crazy. Um, then there's an older black woman who was like involved in a lot of the civil rights movement stuff, and like she had lived in Jim Crow South and
Mhm.
ended up living up in Grand Rapids of all places. And like hearing her experience was really eye-opening, right? And like kind of offered an insight that you might not get otherwise of,
Mhm.
the culture in West Michigan and how it got to be there. And, really a cool perspective.
Right.
But then like the most memorable one for me was this lady. She had to be in her 90s. Had a thick like Dutch accent still.
Mhm.
Um, I guess her family was a missionary family somewhere on an island in the Pacific during World War II, and like they had to flee. I want to say they might have been like Indonesia or somewhere in that
Okay,
region.
okay.
And they had to actively flee from Imperial Japanese forces,
Oof.
and like they got separated from her father,
Mm.
and like just a wild story. Like, oh my gosh, this shit needs to be a movie, like
Right?
something
Right.
crazy like that. And like you gotta wonder like how much of these stories like do the people around you know? Like,
Right,
I just
right.
wanted to like try to maintain that history because I don't know, like I'm a huge history nerd, but um just such significant moments in history.
And you would have
Or
no idea, like, and you would have no idea if you hadn't had the opportunity to sit with them in the back of an ambulance for however long that you were back there.
yeah,
And so, I mean, you that's the aspect of this job that I, uh, hadn't thought about in a long time until we just had that until we're having this conversation right now, is the opportunity to learn about so much that isn't covered in textbooks, it's not covered in the news, it's not covered in just the general Facebook scrolling, and, um, it's another silent benefit, I guess, of
yeah.
working in this industry.
It's like the unmistakable human element, right? Like,
Percent. Yeah,
and you know, it's super interesting. Like talking to old people in general is interesting, right? Like
right.
just like looking at our lives and how much shit we have experienced and been around to witness. Like,
We get to be one of those old people someday that have a hell of a story to tell about the freaking crazy world we're living in now and what
right.
it looks like when living day to day. I hope to be half as awesome as some of the the patients that I've ran on and had the opportunity to talk to.
Yeah. Like, it's funny because I saw something on Facebook recently and it's talking about millennials and we saw 9/11 happen from our classroom, and I'm like, classroom? Like,
What do you mean? We're in New York? Were you what classroom?
well, I'm a millennial too by definition, but
Yeah.
I was working. I had a job. Like, I wasn't in a classroom.
I
Um,
was actually at college. I was in I was in between classes when I was at Ferris when that happened,
Mm,
on my way to history or my political science class, and they had it on the TV in the classroom, and I was like, "What?" And you have people, like, panicking in the hallway trying to explain, and it's like, "What are you talking about?" And then my, political science professor was, like, pointing to the television as we, come into class, and I'm holy shit,
yeah.
holy shit.
Yeah. Well, and like I know for me, like I remember watching the Challenger blow up like on live TV.
Gotcha.
Like,
Not see that, but I mean, I know of it, of course, but I
yeah.
cannot.
And I mean, I was born in 81, so it's not like I was very old, but like old enough to understand the significance of what happened,
Right.
right? Like,
82.
it,
Just a year behind you.
okay, all right. Bold of you to admit that on a global
I'm
global
43.
interview.
43.
Well played. Okay.
I'm okay with that.
But yeah, the stuff that we remember, and
Yeah.
it's gonna, I don't know, part of me thinks like I haven't been through anything interesting enough to tell the next generation, but
Right. Yeah, but we do. And then you have some not so great conversations or interactions with older people. I remember responding to, I think it was, this senior living facility or assisted living facility over at Breton Burton area,
mm,
Breton Woods, maybe.
okay.
Um, and this guy had fallen on the little patio, little cement patio they had attached to their little condo living space that he and his wife shared. And so we help him up off the concrete, we get him seated, and we start talking to him, and he actually knows my pediatrician or knew my pediatrician growing up, Dr. Paxton. And so I'm preparing myself for this. Oh my gosh, it's a small world, this wonderful connecting conversation. And he just looks at me out of the corner of his eye and goes, "Huh, women are getting into everything these days, huh?"
Jesus.
Cool. Cool. You guys are wanting to be doctors now. You're wanting to do all of it, aren't you? And as looked at his wife, who's maybe she didn't hear, I don't know, or she's spaced out or just used to it or embarrassed, I don't know. But
She was staying in her place.
right, as she should. Uh, and I wanted to say, he's sitting there. We pull him up off the concrete patio out back. His fly's undone, and all I can think of is, motherfucker, you're lucky that I don't just tear into you about having, you think of so many fun comebacks after the call that you
Oh,
could have
right.
had. All I could think of is, you got your fly down. We picked you up off of your cement floor, and the only thing you couldn't say thank you. And that's never a thought that I have, by the way, going into any call
Yeah.
is, I hope they say thank you. But looking back at it, I'm like, you couldn't even, what the first thing out of your mouth when we get you upright is comment on the fact that women think they can do everything these days, don't they? It's like, yes, we do, sir.
No, I think
Yes.
that's actually a really good segue because, as I mentioned beforehand, you've kind of broken the gender barrier on the show. You're the
Mhm.
first woman, and you are the director. You're the leader of your three-ring circus over there at AMR. Like, can you talk to me a little bit about what it's been like for you as a woman being at the top of one of these companies in this industry?
For sure. Um, and I guess yeah. Um, it's kind of starting or looking back even at my time just from the female perspective. I know you kind of shared a little bit of background of, females in EMS and your experience of people that um, kind of had me, but when we first started the conversation, reflecting back on experiences that I've had. And I know men have some of these experiences too in the back of the truck, especially the older people. They get handsy. They get handsy in the back of the truck, whether you're male or female.
I've
And
definitely had my ass grabbed by several old
yeah,
women.
yeah.
Yes.
There's that aspect, but something that um, isn't as well. I mean, yes and no, because as just a woman in general, sometimes you have uh, just negative um, interactions with men in any industry. But I mean, I've had people that I work with try to invite themselves over to my house. I've had somebody that I work with grab my ass as I was typing a report at headquarters at Life EMS, where there are multiple other people around. And I thankfully in that moment was very unafraid to say very much out loud, what the fuck are you doing? This isn't a baseball game. What do you, and he like, didn't expect me to say anything out loud and immediately shut down and walked away. But just the boldness, I guess, that some people have with women. And, and I look back on those and I can think that way now, but in the moment, it felt very much like, this is what happens. You have, you had the Me Too movement, you have the, women speaking up now about interactions like that. And there were some people I'm sure that did that then, but in my mind at that time, it's just a casualty of being there, being a person, being a woman. And it wasn't something that I thought, oh, I need to report that right away. It was something that I thought, well, I handled it. I addressed it in real time. And so it's done with. And, you kind of think back now after hearing everything, especially today. I mean, I fucking probably should have said something, because if he was that bold to do that to me when there are other people around in a work environment, what has he done to other people, and what did he do after me? I mean, and again, to that was in comparison such a mild experience compared to others that other people have shared and experienced. Um, that I have, like, I feel guilty not because, oh, it happened to me, but strictly from the point of I should have took it further, because who knows what happened after me, and who he and how far that went after that with other people. Um, but that is, and I share that to say that that's, I mean, that hasn't happened in my current position, but it still happens in an EMS, being such a male dominated field, and women, there's more women a part of this industry now than there has ever been, which
Sure.
is wonderful. But it is historically a very male dominated field that sometimes, unfortunately for me, and it's embarrassing to say, but at that time I was like, yeah, this is just kind of a casualty of the job, a casualty of the, industry. What am I going to do? What am I going to say? And then you have, the fear of saying something of, well, you probably gave him some indication that it was okay. And, no, but I can understand that fear of that other women have to bring stuff like that forward. The fear of how other women will see you, the fear of how how they can twist it, and not just men twist it, but how other people can twist it to kind of give the perception that you were giving some indication that that type of behavior is okay. Um, but all that to say that in the moment, I never really thought about it. I never really thought about me being a woman in a male dominated field. Even when I left to go um, work at the medical control, I was still the only one. Well, the other female that was there was an administrative assistant. So to be the only woman there that was not in a traditionally female role, like a secretary or an administrative assistant, is typically thought of as a female's role, at least in the 50s and, Mad Men era. I mean,
Yeah.
and so to be the only woman there at the office that wasn't a secretary, and I put that in quotation marks because I think administrative assistant is the term now, the appropriate term. So I don't say secretary to minimize. I use that as a way to kind of illustrate the female component to that position, or was
Sure.
associated with that position. And even then, I never really thought about it. I can look back at it now and go, oh, I was the only woman in that office that was not in an administrative assistant role, and what that was like. But it felt like I needed to prove myself, that I deserved to be there. I mean, an imposter syndrome I know is a real thing, but being a female did add another element of, because even in that role, um, in the agency area that we covered, there was still a lot of what did she do to get that role, and then um, the assumptions and comments made that wasn't necessarily made to me directly, but I also could hear them. Like I've got ears, I can hear what you're saying. And then just the more interesting part are the people that felt that they needed to tell me what other people were saying in that regard. It's like, why do you telling me that people are questioning how I got my position? Like, what do you hope to accomplish by that? And the other
Right.
part is like, well, maybe I guess thank you for your transparency and telling me. I don't know what to do with this information. It makes me feel like shit. That's really all I know right now. Um, and then getting the role at AMR, the clinical education manager role, that I didn't. It wasn't really. That wasn't really an authoritative or leadership position. I mean, it was a manager position, but it was clinical education, which felt pretty neutral, at least in regards to gender norms. And so there wasn't really a thought process behind it there. But then we when 3 months after I started, Chad was let go. The OM at the time was let go. And then Scooge was the interim for quite a long time before he actually took it on officially. And then when he was let go, we ran about 6 months without an OM. And during that 6 months, we'd done quite a few interviews with individuals. And then ultimately, leadership beyond me that was actually doing the interviewing for those roles just couldn't find somebody that they were comfortable with, that wasn't quite what they were looking for. And then me and my partner at the time had just gone on a trip to Costa Rica, and that's when COVID was like really coming out, and I was
Mm.
to the point where I was concerned that I might not be able to get back into the US
Oh,
on our way
geez.
back from it. So I think it was the end of February when we came back. And so when I came back, because of the um the severity of COVID and kind of as it was amping up, um, I just started doing and informing folks of things and changes to protocols and policies because they were coming left, right, and center, one after another.
Every
New
day.
protocol, new protocol. And so we didn't have an OM at the time, so I just started doing it. And I think that's what um, my boss later told me was kind of the first thread that he was considering asking me to apply for that position. I did not want it. I didn't want it. Nobody lasts in that role. Nobody in the history
Yeah.
of OMs has lasted longer than a couple of years in that position. And I have my son to look after. Yeah, I've got, he's however old he was at the time, he was in middle school, I think. And that's too much of a risk. That's too much of a gamble. I've got to be able to take care of him. I don't want to take on a position that I could end up unemployed in 2 years for whatever reason. And so I wasn't interested. So I never once looked at it as a possibility or even considered it. After about a month or so after I got back, I got a phone call on a Saturday morning from my regional director asking me why I haven't applied for the position. And I said, I don't want it. I don't want it. And I gave my story that I just shared with you. Nobody has lasted in this position. And then that's not just unique to AMR. Every location that I've worked in or seen or know of, that position just doesn't last for very long. And I don't want to put myself in that risk when I've got my son to worry about. And he did his best to convince me, no, it's a long-term position. People retire from this position. You're doing a really great job. Um, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, I'm going to need some time to think about it. And he said, oh, yeah, take your time. Take your time. I'll give you, as much time as you need. Well, he called me the very next morning, Sunday morning, wanting to, so, all right, what's your answer? I said, Sweet. Um, And so I just kind of said, yeah, okay. In my head, I thought maybe me taking this position, maybe a clinical my current role at the time, the clinical education manager, maybe that's an easier position to fill. And these people are really wanting or needing somebody to fill the OM spot. So, all right, I'll give it a shot. And I took it and like I was talking about earlier, I am really good at functioning in a crisis. And when I've got high priority things that need to be taken care of and done, um, I can do that. But once COVID started to to cool down, it was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So I started off well, but that wasn't without, there was well, they couldn't find anybody else. And what did she do to get this job? And what did she do or this position? And so that hasn't really gone away. It's not as loud now. Um, but I um it's not an active thought until somebody brings it up. I know when I first got the position, Jerry Seitzma was like, "Yes, another female," you know,
Yeah.
and celebrated. And, and to that point, I hadn't even thought about it until she said something. And then, um, sitting in some of the chems meetings, unless outside of um, a nurse sitting in for representing a hospital system, I'm still the only female. But even in those, sometimes hospital representation isn't even a part of this meeting, so I am the only female. Whether it's fire chiefs meeting or we had to sit in with some police chiefs the other day, and I was the only female, um, and so I don't think of it in the moment, but when people bring it to my attention, I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, yes, I am. I guess I am the only female, um, and it's important. Representation is always important. And sometimes I don't always see it for what it is, but I am grateful to have the opportunity and not always have it be um, followed up by, well, what did you do to get this position? Or I have an idea of what she did to get this position. And um, but even then, I just kind of rolls off my back a little bit to some extent. But for the longest time, it did feed my imposter syndrome, as with anything
Oh, sure.
else. Like, yeah, why did they give it to me? Why did they give it to me? Is it because they think, I'm easy, or because they can take advantage of me later on, or but more so, I need to prove that I know what I'm doing, or that I'm a good fit for this role, and that's kind of hard to do when I didn't even want the role to begin with.
Right.
um,
Yeah.
but it certainly has come with its challenges. But I am, and I think age does that a little bit too. I'm kind of at a point now where I am somewhat comfortable now with my current position and what it requires. But also, I'm pretty comfortable talking about my experience and sharing. So if I feel like at this point, if somebody were to actually come up to me directly to my face and make a comment about me being a female in my current role, I'm pretty comfortable, like, well, just having further discussion and not necessarily going round for round with this person, but but maybe.
It's not off the table, right?
Right, right, right. But just having that discussion and not taking it as yeah, somebody sees me as not enough. Somebody sees me as not deserving. Somebody sees me as, fill in the blank. But it is interesting. And I mean, and I will say, even in this leadership position, there are still people above me that are just disgusting. And
Mm,
the fact, knowing eh, that they are still allowed to have some of those positions is interesting to me. And then some of that is, I think, the stories then that I'm referring to. They, I wasn't a part of it. It didn't happen to me necessarily. Um, so it's not like I can, hey, this was shared with me third party, and I don't even know if it was work related or happened at work or whatever the case may be. But they're a terrible person. I just want you to know that they're a terrible person. Do with that what you will.
right.
Uh, but it does make me more um, um, conscious of it, as to try to thinking back of all the interactions where I didn't report or say something to somebody, because for me it was just kind of a casualty of the job. I know that that's not necessarily the case for other people, and I've seen that in my current role happen firsthand, how it affects. I mean, we've had to let employees go and other things is because of interactions like that, and to actually be the support person on the other side of the women who've been the target of this behavior and just how it's affected them and continues to affect them now is um, enough for me to, want to say something going forward.
Yeah.
And I do. And it's always easier to advocate for somebody else than yourself, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
For whatever reason.
Yeah. And I don't think you've really mentioned it, but it's worth mentioning that your longevity in your position, you've outlasted the previous two.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like AMR was kind of at an interesting moment, I think, when all that happened, right? Because like regional manager, Dick, he was put out, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then I think John, right? John
Yep.
replaced him.
Yep.
And then Scooch found his way out the door.
Mhm.
I feel like Chad hadn't left like too long before that, and like AMR was desperately in need of some stability. Um, it's like, even like in the ranks of, the folks out on the road, like I was trying to like help make things better for everybody there. And like I know there's talk of like union stuff happening, and everything felt very shaky, right? And so like there's all this turnover, like levels higher than me, and now you've been here like 6 years,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And I mean that's great.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a lot that has happened since you've been on, and like a lot of the whole territory discussion and all of that. Like, you know, when you don't have the staff to put trucks on the road, it's really hard to cover all the areas. And then you've got other companies that are like, kind of horning in on places that your company worked previously. Like, hey, we can tell you through a contract, we're always gonna like
Yeah.
we know it never really plays out the way it's written in a
Right.
contract, right?
Right. Right.
But yeah, so there's a lot of like shakeups that happened in that span, and then of course COVID really changed things for everybody.
Yeah. 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 I hesitate to say that COVID did anything positive, but I mean, it really did open the door for EMS to be accepted in the multifaceted areas that we've trained for and do on a regular basis because we have to. We have to be jack of all trades in this position. And in the EMS system, EMTs and paramedics, we have to adapt and overcome constantly
Yeah,
and be flexible to change when the scene changes or the situation requires it. And so, uh, again, I'll repeat it for all that it was, COVID did some good in finally opening up a lot of those doors that were locked for so long for folks in EMS, just thinking that no, they don't have all they can do is pre-hospital in a truck in an ambulance. All they can do is drive. All they can do is, use whatever minimizing language you want. And COVID, they needed us, whether they thought that we could handle it or not. They needed us and opened that door out of desperation even, and I'll take that. I'll take the desperation. That's mine because we showed up. And I say we collectively, and not just AMR, but I think EMS in general, um, across the US and everywhere else. I mean, we showed up, and I think that's really continued to keep a lot of those doors open just to really, and it just demonstrates the versatility of EMS. And um, not to say that I'm glad that COVID happened, but
right.
in that perspective, I'm grateful.
Do you have any specific examples of areas that, these doors were opened because of COVID?
Yeah. So there was an assisted living facility, or maybe it was I don't remember the exact um, designation of this facility, but it was maybe a rehab facility of some sort that required nursing staff to hand out medications and to help residents, get them out of their bed into the toilet and to change their briefs and other things. And nursing staff just stopped showing up because they were afraid. We don't know what the protocol is. This sounds really dangerous. I don't want to show up to work and get COVID and die. And so we had uh, quite a few contracts with that facility where we would send individuals to work their shifts because their nurses wouldn't come in. And so we were sending EMTs and medics to work to hand out medications which would ultimately in turn end up requiring helping somebody out of bed to the bathroom or, to change their briefs or to get them something to eat. And so we were functioning as nursing home staff essentially
Mm.
uh, because they didn't have anybody else to do it. And so they were just desperate and reaching out to whoever can help in a pinch. We worked at some homeless shelters. We also provided staffing at homeless shelters. Um, that to do something very similar. And they opened up, I think it was the old, gosh, was that Holland home that was on Fulton? That was,
Yes. Yeah, I think
um,
so.
so they turned that into a residential housing for the unhoused in the
Mm.
inner city. And so they had, our responsibility was to help them and to watch them and to screen them. And if they had medications that they needed to take, they would have that set up. And so they used us in multiple ways that I mean, not that that's necessarily where those with an EMT or medic license want it to be at a nursing home or a situation like
Right.
that. But that showed, the hospital systems, you know, just how versatile we could be, which allowed us to open up some protocols and change protocols because they could see that we're capable. And so that's kind of what I mean when I say that it opened up a lot of doors where even though we were helping in a different, maybe a lower scope capacity, if you want to compare it that way. But the versatility that it showed allowed the hospital systems to see truly what we're capable of instead of just viewing us as drivers and um, just increasing not really increasing our scope, but increasing our capacity and what they would allow us to do with protocols. So they're making changes to protocols as a result of that, especially the respiratory stuff. Um, yeah,
Yeah, that's really interesting because, like, I was at Portland for all of that, and we were not a big enough service to be able to help anybody else. Like, we didn't have enough medics to staff our trips.
right.
So, yeah. But no, that's awesome that you guys were able to do more of that. Um, just like you had the numbers to support it.
And volume was so low because nobody wanted to go to the hospital
Oh,
during COVID.
yeah.
They were terrified. So we had the bodies because people were just sitting around in the truck because nobody was calling 911.
Yep.
So yeah, we did have the capacity to help and happy to.
Yeah. Like, I feel like the only things we got called out for during those shutdown were cardiac arrests,
Right.
and the the protocol changes that took place for that
Right.
were just bonkers.
Right. Everybody wait outside, one person go in and take a look. And then if it's truly a cardiac arrest or you truly need the bodies that are outside, then you can come back and let them know. Then they can suit up and then they can go into the house. But yeah, I remember those very yeah.
Yeah, and like, needing to have like certain filters for the outlet for your
Yeah.
BVMs and whatnot. And like one of the things that they attempted to implement for us was just so bonkers. Like, I appreciate the thought process behind it,
Mhm.
but they wanted to have a tent to isolate droplets. So they fabbed up like these little PVC frames that we would have to put together like a little erector set. You put a garbage bag over it, and then you use like the emesis bags to poke through so you've got like hands inside of there. So they expected us to assemble this fucking contraption and put a garbage bag over their loved one's face while they're just like dying, like, because you can't start CPR. And I took a really hard stand against it. I'm like, fuck that. Like,
Yeah.
I know there's a risk to me in this job.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if COVID's going on or not. There is a risk that's associated with the work.
Right.
Like, I accept that. I'm not gonna stand there for 5 minutes fucking around with a garbage bag and this like little tube thing to like that just screams amateur hour. Like fuck that
Right.
noise. Like and like I think
You up the
like
circus music, fellas.
for sure. Like yeah. Um but no, like the protocol changed too to like you only work them for 10 minutes or something and uh I think there's only one cardiac arrest that I did for 10 minutes and stopped. Because like once you start, like if you're getting exposed to that, it's gonna happen in that 10 minutes, so you might as well run out the full like AHA standard, whatever.
Right.
Like I don't want to be the guy that shows up and like does a little pushing for 10 minutes and then like, well, sorry, we're out.
Somebody will be back eventually. Take care.
Yeah, because I mean that's not a good look for anybody.
Right.
And yeah, it was one of those like obvious disconnects between the people making the decisions and the people on the road doing the work,
Right. Agreed.
which happens. It happens a lot in this industry. But yeah, it's like, no, I'm not. I'm not gonna play around with that. That's just stupid. It was an interesting time to be a paramedic.
100%. 100%. What a time to be alive.
Right. Yeah, and that's when I kind of burned out on the road too, and then I transitioned into the ER, which hell of a time to go to the ER too. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
man. Whew.
Damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Yeah, yep. And like there's really not a lot to say about that. Like you just felt so powerless because half the tower I think had, like negative pressure,
Right.
like but the rooms are full and you don't have anywhere to put people. And like we had, military issued tents outside in the ambulance bay, like for extra triage and shit. And it's just like,
Yeah.
I don't know, it really overwhelmed the system. And yeah, it was one of those things like being in the field, I was paying attention to what was going on over in Europe, and like Italy just got smoked by that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when the conversation in our shop changed. Like, look, this shit is coming. And like they have semi trucks with refrigerators to keep all the
Yeah.
dead bodies in.
Mm-hmm.
Like they are overwhelmed. This is not a hoax. Like we have to do something at our level to get ready for this because it's coming.
Yeah.
And, so like we kind of like went into panic mode and started buying like plastic sheeting to line the patient compartment and shit and just like
Yeah.
it was so strange.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, thank God that's not ongoing. But
Agree.
I hear there's like more crazy shit coming, so
I'm sure. I'm sure.
yeah, it never ends.
No.
But yeah, so we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
Um, how has all this stuff impacted your personal mental health?
So I think being out of direct field work for so long has kind of like what we spoke about in the beginning. I've kind of come back to being able to feel. experience emotions and allow myself to experience emotions, whereas before you just kind of get in a habit of locking everything down so you can get from one call to the next. And then that sticks with you until for me, I don't know, maybe 5 years or so after regular field work that I started to kind of, um, come back to human form, in a way. This is more so now, um, what affects me are the employees. So I still get to I advocating for the employees is really where my passion is. And I mean that in nearly every capacity of advocating for them, whether it's within the hospital system, chem system, but primarily their overall well-being and their mental health. So that's the other part of the conversations that I have with them and the new hire orientation, um, is that I'm always accessible. I don't live far from the operation, and that has I mean, it's not like a huge noticeable difference maybe, but I do get individuals that do reach out to me directly, and the fact that they feel comfortable coming to me and telling me that this is too much. This is feeling really heavy, or this was a hard call, or I've got XYZ going on at home, and this is really making things struggle. I take advantage of the fact that we don't have a union, and I can allow for so that allows me to have some flexibility and how our we can address our folks' needs. And so I appreciate that very much. And so I would say the most difficult part mentally for me now is um, seeing how these calls are affecting the employees. And I mean, I have the ability to offer them resources, and I do, so that kind of mitigates a lot of like the down stuff. But I find myself, starting to my eyes starting to water when I'm reading difficult like the reports from the difficult calls, and that's not something that ever happened before. And so part of that I think is the removal of like the field work. You kind of naturally your walls start to kind of break down a little bit that you put in place when you're in the field regularly just to survive the day to day and the transitioning from one call to another. Um, but I think it's help from perspective, and yes, it probably limited what I allowed my son to experience growing up when he was younger. But I also gained a shit ton of empathy for so many people just from experiencing and seeing what I've experienced. And if, it took 5 years for that egg to crack a little bit and I'm actually able to start feeling emotions again, um, it's hard to say it wasn't for the best or there wasn't positive associated with working in EMS. Just if nothing else for the empathy that it allows me to have for other people. Um, uh, it's
Go.
I think it's, um, what am I trying to say? It's knowing that you can get back to that. I think, and this is just an assumption I'm making. Nobody has said this, so I'm not trying to put words in anybody's mouth, but I think it feels hopeful to know that, um, you are not permanently like this. You are not permanently without emotion. You are not permanently callous. You're not permanently sarcasm doesn't really go away, but you learn to use it a little better maybe or a little
Sure.
and, all the stuff that we have in place for survival, it's not permanent. And while I haven't really been actively I mean, in therapy, I usually talk about other things. I don't really talk about this, my life in EMS. Um, and so to know that that hasn't been an active piece of my work on myself, but knowing just kind of through naturally as time goes on that, um, you do start to feel again. That's hopeful to me. And maybe I'll try to incorporate some of that with the conversation too. And when people start to feel like, I imagine that's a component of it. I don't know. I don't hear what I'm not on the side of the couch that you're on the side of when you're meeting with folks. But sometimes I wonder if that's what aids in some of the feeling of helplessness. and when you're kind of struggling in this industry and in the others, is that you feel like you're stuck, that this is just never going to end. I'm I'm always going to feel like this. Everything, I'm going to feel numb forever. And so being able to feel those things again is reassuring, to at least to me, and I feel
Yeah.
hopeful that I'm not stuck feeling this numbness. I don't really truly feel joy. People ask me, "Are you happy?" I can't really tell. Like, no, I am happy. I'm having a good time, and but just numbness, and
Yeah.
so that's starting to subside a little bit, and
That's
maybe I can start sharing that a little bit more too,
yeah,
and
that's
that'll
great.
help.
No, I really do love though that you have that perspective. Like you don't stay that way forever. And I really do think that that's such a heavy thing because when you feel like you're fucked up, that's like a just an attack on your self-esteem. Like, I'm broken, right? And
Yeah,
nobody has any context to understand where I'm coming from. And like, I'm sure I'm not the only one that has said something that is wildly inappropriate in certain company, and people are just like, dude, what the fuck?
right. Yeah,
Um,
sabotage is, I mean, with that regard, is you feeling broken. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can count how many relationships I've ruined just from self-sabotage alone,
mm,
because of some of it. I imagine is from that. I feel numb. I don't feel things. You feel broken. You feel not enough, and so that bleeds out into relationships. And I am specifically talking about romantic relationships, but it's also, I mean, friendships too. Um, but yeah, ruins
yeah.
lots of.
Well, and, there's a high divorce rate in first responder populations, right?
Yep,
And my marriage has certainly uh not come through unscathed. Like there's been
sure.
issues and
Mhm.
we have some of that shit coming from both sides. Like my wife is also an army vet and an OR nurse. Like she's carrying around her shit. I'm carrying around my shit. And sometimes, you know, those two groups of shit just are not like
Right.
they don't work well together.
A lot of shit. It's a lot of shit.
For sure. Um, and yeah, it can be super challenging. And if things aren't right at home and you're struggling at work, like that just all piles on.
Yeah,
And I think too often we as a community kind of make it seem like the mental health struggles we face are either, oh, they're just like they've got their problems and that's just how they are, or oh, it's the work stuff and you can't handle it. But it's it's everything. And I don't think that we discuss it in that respect often enough.
yeah, I would agree.
Man, yeah. So you say you've been in therapy.
Mhm.
Was it just a I don't want to dig, but like, was it a personal thing or was it like shit from work that was starting? Like, what was it that pushed you to seek out therapy?
I don't think the work component ever really registered with me until I had spent some more time in therapy. So it was
Mm,
never a focus for me to talk about in therapy, but things that I kind of came to realize and see for what it was after going to therapy. Initially, I went to therapy because I just wanted to be better. I wanted to be a better partner. I wanted to be a better mom. I wanted to be a better employee. I just wanted to be a better person. And so I thought I would go to therapy, um, to help that, specifically in the parenting realm. Being a single mom, being a single parent in general can be tough, and you can't cover everything. And so I wanted to know just how bad I was fucking up my kid. and there's anything I could do to mitigate that or to reverse some of it. Um, but that, and then as you know, the longer I'm in it, I kind of start to see where my people pleasing or avoidance in relationships kind of ultimately ended those, because I think to your point, it's never really just one or the other. It's never really just work or just personal. It's the whole thing as a whole. But I think if I'm honest, the reason that our divorce rate is so high in EMS is because it's just easier to throw the personal stuff aside. 'Cause that's nope, that's just I'll find somebody else, because there's no shortage of human beings, right? Um, so I think that's the easier thing to let go of. So I think we blame it on whatever we want to blame it on. When really, if we learn how to handle and address our experiences on the road when we're working, and can we learn how to share that in an appropriate way, but we don't take the time to do that. We cover it up with sarcasm, we cover it up with you know jokes, and we cover it up with whatever we can find at the time, so that we don't have to feel it, because it feels fucking terrible at the time. So whatever we can do to make light of it, but then we just leave it there, and then it's compartmentalizing works really, really, really good in EMS. It does not work in relationships.
Mm.
And it causes all that disconnection that ultimately leads to the demise of most relationships, at least in my experience. And I have certainly, the more I take a look at that, the more I can see my contribution to those scenarios. Um, but I think um, I definitely thought I lost my train of thought there. What were we talking about?
I'm so glad I'm not the only one that does that. Like, it's definitely happened a couple times recording
Uh,
episodes. Yeah, we were just talking about the need that you felt to get into therapy. And
oh, right. So that was more of a, I just wanted to be better and do better. But through that, I kind of started to peel back the layers a bit and see just how much I kept the compartmentalization that works so well in our job and EMS, um, and how that just doesn't work when it translates to personal relationships. And um, so that's primarily. So there wasn't a huge fallout. There wasn't a bad call that resulted, or that therapy resulted in. Um, it was just I wanted to do better, but then through that I started to kind of unravel all the other stuff that was attached to it, and yeah, identify the emotions and the feelings, and not being numb anymore. 'Cause that numbness was, and that's another one where was that the job, or was I like that before? I don't know, but what I do know now is that I don't feel numb anymore, which
mm,
is good and bad. Some days I would really love for that numbness to come back, but
for sure.
I'm also very grateful that it's not there.
Yeah. What would you say are some things that you have found beneficial to your mental health? Like, I'm talking like activities, groups of people, anything that, has kind of like bolstered your mental wellness.
For me, I've always been a fairly physically active person. I do have like regular physical activity at the gym and other things. I think for me, it's having that kind of physical outlet and forcing it almost, because sometimes that's the easiest thing for me to let go of, is I've got too much shit to do, so I'll just skip this, whether it's going for a walk or whatever the case may be. But I'm pretty introverted. And so hanging out with, I have a small group of friends, but they're kind of scattered all over the US. So it's not like I can just call up a friend and say, hey, let's go for a drink. Or I mean, I have one or two that I could probably do that with, but everyone else is South Carolina, Washington State, and so they're just not close by, and so I don't get that opportunity to actually go out with them. I've met some wonderful people through my partner too, and being introduced to his friends, just going out and having, um, we'll do a game night or something like that, and that's very helpful in that I'm not focused on, you know, my anxiety causing things, whether it's my anxiety with my parenting or my son or my anxiety here at work. Um, so I hate to say distraction, but really just kind of occupying my time with good conversation and enjoying other people's company is really open to going shooting, finding my love for motorcycles and going out for a ride. I mean, it's still pretty introverted activity sometimes if you're especially if it's just you going out for a ride, but really allowing myself to experience everything, like outside, the ride, the view, the weather, not right now, not the weather right now, but
Oh,
the weather in summer and warmer months. And, taking my son to go, experience places with him and really kind of forcing myself out of the house, which is very easy for me to do. I'm very comfortable at home and not going out and doing anything.
right.
So really forcing myself to get out there and interact with other individuals, even if it's going to the pool hall on 28th Street where, I may not be interacting with everybody, but there are people around me. And every once in a while you might get a hi or an excuse me or something. But even having that social interaction is is more helpful than I like to admit. Uh, because of my comfort, just being by myself. I mean, and that's been a thing since childhood. I've
Mm,
always been on my own and very comfortable being on my own. And so it requires more energy for me to go out and be out with people and interact in that way, than it is for me to hang out at home. But in the moment, I'm often one that's like, oh, I can't believe I made plans. I would much rather stay home. But once I go out, I never regret it.
yeah.
And same with going to the gym. As much as I sometimes would like to stay home, I go out and I never regret it. I go to the shooting range and that's kind of like, oh, I wish I hadn't planned to go this. I would much rather just sit on the couch. But I go out and I do it and I experience it and I don't regret it because you have this kind of new, uh, I keep using the word, hopefulness, and I'm finding that more and more. But I'm also realizing that it requires, get off my ass and get outside and
Mm,
do something.
yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's just getting to that point that takes all the
Yeah,
convincing, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Um, yeah, this has been a really great conversation. And I
good.
I appreciate you for, well, I mean, the conversation has been ongoing between us for really quite a while.
Mhm.
And no, I'm just so stoked that you're willing to come on. What would you say is your best advice for people that are struggling, like within our industry?
Oh, best advice. Um, it's okay to ask for help and get help. It's okay to take a break, and it doesn't last forever. The feelings of despair or sadness or hopelessness or whatever it is. And I am just learning this myself. So sometimes I think that's me reminding myself also. But um, nothing lasts forever, and this falls into that category. And because it's so easy to feel like I'm always going to feel this way, and I can vouch for the fact that it does not last forever, and that has it's a new level of hope for me.
That's fantastic. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you thought we should?
I can't think of anything. Um, I mean, I'm sure if we dug further, we could find something else to talk about, but I can't. I think that we talked about everything that I thought, and then some, and we talked about other stuff too that I didn't even think of. So no, I can't think of anything.
Good enough. All right. Well, Alex Truman, you've been
Mm.
fantastic.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate you having me.
I'm so fortunate to know you, and the fact that you've been involved in my journey, both as a paramedic and into social work, has been incredible. Um, yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you. You've been doing good things since I came on board 2017, 2018. When I first met you with that page you started, you've been doing good things for even before that, I'm sure. But that was my
Well,
introduction. So you keep doing what you're doing.
I
I don't know if
appreciate
you
that.
realize the effect that you're having on folks, but it's a
Not
good
really.
thing. Let me tell you. You're doing good things, my man.
I
Good
mean,
things.
that's hearing that is it makes it all worth it, right? Like I don't really want recognition. I
Sorry.
often, yeah, I couldn't believe that, honestly, but no, I really do appreciate it though, and um, thanks for being so willing to engage on such a tough topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. Anytime.
Uh,
I appreciate the opportunity.
yeah, you're welcome back at any time, and I'll probably try to get you on for like a live stream that hopefully
Okay.
goes better than the first one.
Oh no,
Um,
I missed that.
oh yeah, it was more for figuring out some problems and
Ah, gotcha.
technical difficulties, but I think I've got an idea what might make it go a little better. But it's all very slow in building, so
Yeah.
yeah. But stay
Good.
tuned.
I
But yeah,
will. I will
all
happily.
right.
All
Well, anyway,
right.
I think that about does it for the show.
All right.
Click like, share, subscribe, do all the things, and give us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you. Alex, thanks again.
Yeah. Thanks, Josh. Take care.
You too. Bye.